Welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. This is Mastering Matchups. I'm Jacob Gibbs. I'm joined, as always, by Ryan Heath today to talk through some matchup-based start-sit decisions. And we're going to just start off with a bang here. A couple rookies. One was the first running back drafted. One was the last running back drafted. Bill Croskey-Merritt or Ashton Jeanty, Ryan, who are you starting in week 3? What is going on?
Yeah, so I'm starting Jeanty and not even thinking about it much. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm buying this whole squeaky wheel thing with him, with Pete Carroll wanting to get him more touches. Makes a lot of sense to me. The Raiders have kind of just run into 2 game scripts where they've just been throwing the ball a lot, which is kind of not what anyone expected preseason. They've run into 2 of the top 3 pass funnels by pass rate over expectation in the first 2 weeks, that being the Chargers and the Patriots. I think this is just a game script thing. Will he get the 2-minute drill stuff? I don't really know, but I think either way, against a Commanders defense that was the biggest run funnel in the league last season, Dan Quinn constantly defaulting to nickel, having the highest rate of 5 defensive backs on the field on opposing runs. I think it's a Jeanty game.
Makes a lot of sense. Brother, you lucked out on the Brock Bowers injury.
I did. I seriously did.
For anybody who doesn't know, me and Ryan debated Brock Bowers before the season. I was on team draft Bowers. He was, fade Bowers for all these other, awesome players at receiver and running back. And if we would have made it through these first 2 weeks and he was healthy and they were playing and passing all the time, I would have been talking so much crap after 2 weeks. But all righty, I guess I've got the huge grain of salt I can throw in if I was wrong on that one. I love that these two are playing each other. I agree with you for what it's worth. I have Jeanty at 16 overall in the running back rankings, and I think I'm going to move him up a little bit the more that I've thought about Jaylen Warren, who's somebody I'm really high on. I have ahead of him. Probably going to flip-flop those two. Probably going to move him ahead of Chase Brown. But that's kind of what we're getting into today. Mastering matchups as the season progresses, we're going to bring you guys a lot of really cool scheme-specific stuff, looking at what different defensive coaches are doing and how offensive coaches might, work around that, what players fit, what types of matchups. But this early in the season, it's just too small of a sample size to really feel that confident in what we're looking at. Ryan's got some advanced matchup notes that we'll get to later. So today we're mostly going to be focused on start-sit because we've got some really interesting decisions to make, especially at running back, but all across the board. We've got quarterbacks missing, so we have to potentially replace, Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow, whoever it is. You might have to replace in your lineup, but then also how does that trickle down and affect their pass catchers? Are we not going to start Terry McLaurin if Jaden Daniels doesn't play? What do we do with T. Higgins? There's a bunch of stuff we're going to cover today on Beyond the Box Score. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Ryan, for being here. How are you doing, man, this late in the week?
I'm doing great, man. This is the part of my week where I feel like I'm over the hump. I've got all the notes. I feel like I have a grip on the slate of games. And now it's just talking about it, writing about it, and getting to talk football. It's my stress levels always go at their highest on Wednesday when I'm oh, there's so much I need to get through and learn. And now we're chilling. Now I got it all. Now we can just talk ball.
Love it. All right, let's talk ball. We've got some interesting decisions here. We're going to start with Bill Croskey-Merritt. So we do love, it's a perfect setup for Jeanty to potentially get a bunch of carries against this Washington run funnel defense. When Ryan says that, what does that mean? It means in the past, we've seen in neutral situations, all things equal, teams have chosen to attack with the ground game against this defense more so than through the air. You can find, this specifically on Fantasy Points data. Almost everything we're going to mention today is referenced from the data suite, just a tremendous resource, which, by the way, Matchups 15, we've got it. We've got the code. It only took 3 weeks, but I've got it. Matchups 15, all caps, will get you 15% off at Fantasy Points data. So we look at this game, Washington versus Las Vegas. It could be a lot of Ashton Jeanty on the ground, which in theory would, slow the game down a little bit, potentially, run that clock and limit the amount of touches that the Washington Commanders might have. And then we also have like the Jane Daniels thing. So it's tough to know for sure where to fit Jacory Croskey-Merritt in. The reason that I started like comparing these two, other than it just being provocative, is that I think they actually set up sort of similarly in terms of how I see what their roles might be. I think, if Jeanty, we saw him lose the passing down work in week 2. There's these clips floating around the web of him struggling as a pass protector. If he settles in as this early down guy, clear lead back, like offensive engine, but like not so much the passing downs, like that's, I think, kind of what Bill, the best version of him could be. And so like, I think if Jaden plays, Washington is probably going to be pretty heavy favorites here at home. Do you know the opening line? They were like probably favored by 6 points or something like that.
Yeah, it was 6 points at one point. Now it's a lot closer. Yeah. The line is pretty much telling me that Jaden is not playing. It's kind of the assumption that I'm going with here.
Right.
But yeah,
I think that makes sense. And so even if he doesn't play, they would probably be favored at home. And it's just like, I don't know where exactly he fits in the running back landscape. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that today because we've got some other running backs who were drafted much higher than him. I'll just list them off. It's Breece Hall, Omarion Hampton, James Conner, and Tony Pollard. I want to talk about those guys. A lot of them are falling. They've not had a great start to the season. And so like, how do we make sense of them? Where do they fit into the rankings? So I'm going to share my screen, share my running back rankings, and I want you to start us off with Breece Hall. How are you looking at him in week 3?
Yeah, so with Breece going into week 2, the fantasy results weren't there, but kind of what we hoped would happened in that he got a larger share of the touches on the ground. At least on paper, a pretty difficult matchup here against a Tampa Bay run defense with Vita Vea. But on kind of a advanced note, the Buccaneers have allowed the 7th highest success rate to opposing zone run concepts. And that is almost exclusively what the Jets have done with Breece Hall so far this year.
Interesting.
League high 90% of his carries coming on those concepts. I think, when you just get Hall in outside zone, get him away from the interior, if you're not slamming him into the line, that's where you can make stuff happen. So I would be quite a bit higher on Hall than this ranking shows. It's not amazing that the Jets are 7-point underdogs, obviously, but I still think they, at least at the start of this game, are going to do their absolute best to establish to whatever degree they're able to. They have the lowest pass rate over expectation as an offense through the first 2 weeks. That is clearly this team's identity. So I like Hall above most of these names. I like him over Croskey-Merritt. I would even like him over a Kyren Williams, most likely over a Tony Pollard.
Yeah, we'll get to Kyren Williams later in our flex discussions. We're going to talk about different flex start-sit scenarios for you as well. So I do have Breece Hall down this week at 26th, which makes him like one of the players I'm lowest on relative to consensus. 9 spots below consensus. I have immediately above him, I have DeAndre Swift, Omarion Hampton, James Conner, Bill Croskey-Merritt, Kyren Williams, Tony Pollard. And I don't feel great about any of those, but I don't feel great about Breece either. I think that if they get where they're clearly trailing points, that we might see more Isaiah Davis than we like. Now that he's healthy and back in, like we saw him play those reps last week, I worry a lot about the implied total here. It's going to be one of the lowest every week, but here they are down at just 19 points. And so the rest of the running backs in that range, like you don't really want to start unless it's somebody who's getting like all of the work, like Devon Achane or what Chuba Hubbard's been giving us, Alvin Kamara. But like when it comes to a backfield like Cleveland or like the Giants, like that's kind of where I'm at with Breece. Is like he doesn't have the role that those other players do, and so he has to be so good from an efficiency standpoint. Can he do that against Tampa Bay? Maybe, but they have been pretty freaking tough to run on. They've been one of the best tackling teams against running backs so far. So I'm just having a tough time with him. I do have Bill Croskey-Merritt ahead of him under the assumption that Jaden's going to play. If Jaden is out, I'm fine starting Breece ahead of him. But honestly, they would profile very similarly. I think they would have similar types of roles, and I like the matchup a little bit better for Croskey-Merritt. They're kind of the same, right? You just have so much more confidence in Breece as a talent that you would push him ahead of Croskey-Merritt because it's like backup quarterbacks are in. they don't get really the passing downs. Like they're really pretty similar.
I mean, yeah, part of it is that I am that much more confident in him as a talent. I think like week one kind of was the proof of concept there for all of us people that have been screaming about how Breece Hall is so good and how these other running backs in the backfield are so not on Breece's level, at least. But yeah, I think Breece is pretty much a locked for 70-80% of the backfield rushing workload. I don't really think that Croskey-Merritt is. We've never seen, this is more of a usage note, I guess, but we've never really seen that level of designed rush consolidation from a Commander's back over the last couple of years. Even when like Austin Eckler or Brian Robinson were missing time last year, we would be seeing another back, Jeremy McNichols or whoever, just kind of in that 40 to 45% opportunity share role as well. So I don't know. I don't think it's like an instant given that JCM is just going to take all of it. So that's kind of why I would have him a bit lower than all of these guys this week.
That's a good call. Yeah, we haven't seen it yet. What I will say is, there were some of you who were screaming that Breece Hall is like clearly the most talented backfield. There were dozens of us who were doing the same thing for Bill Croskey-Merritt, and we feel very strongly that he's about to show everybody who he is. We look at the rankings here. There is some confidence in Croskey-Merritt for sure. He's up to running back 27 in consensus rankings, just one spot behind Omarion Hampton at 26, which is very interesting to me. I think they're in pretty similar roles. Maybe people are scared of the Denver defense, but the Denver defense did just get picked on and like was shown a very clear blueprint for how to beat it, which is to attack these linebackers, to attack up the middle with the run game. Jonathan Taylor just crushed them. And Omarion Hampton is like, if anything, that's what he does, right? We don't know if the offensive line is going to be able to move the way that we need them to do for him to find lanes to run up the middle. But if they do, like that is the path of least resistance against this Broncos defense. So where are you at with Hampton? I do have him 2 spots behind Croskey-Merritt. But again, if Jaden is out, then I would probably move Croskey-Merritt just behind him.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense to be conservative with Hampton this week. From like a season-long perspective, I'm still very much in on Hampton. But yeah, just I am not that confident that Hampton's going to get more than half of the rushing workload this week after that late game fumble. And just from a matchup perspective, yeah, this is very much like a pass funnel. It's 2 pass funnels going against each other. It's the Broncos and the Chargers. So I think this is probably more of like a high flying shootout type of game than a kind of grind it out with Hampton type of game.
We'll see if Bo Nix can support that, then it might be. I mean, if not, then I think it could be a lot of Hampton. But of course, Najee Harris got in more than we expected last week. That could continue to trend that way. Ryan has some interesting notes on the Chargers pass game and how it lines up in this matchup against Denver. We'll get to that here in a second. So a couple more running backs. Just real quick, Tony Pollard or Jacory Croskey-Merritt. If I finally found the spot where you'll choose Bill?
Yeah, I'm going to choose Bill here. And it's just because Pollard, any game the Titans aren't favored in, it's really hard to feel confident.
Yeah, I have Pollard up at 20 because the usage has been so good, but actually it hasn't, like he has all the snap rates and everything. But if you look at his expected fantasy points per the Fantasy Points Data Suites model, he's still down at like RB 26, even with this 80+% snap rate, all the running back touches. It doesn't amount to much when the running back touches are all just, the first 2 touches on a 3 and out over and over. So probably moving him down. I'm totally fine with Bill over him. Love to hear that from Ryan. Finally, we got one. The last one, and you did have some notes on this, I believe. James Conner. Yeah, what are we doing with James Conner? It's been a tough start.
Yeah, so Connor's in kind of a similar spot to Bill, to Breece, from all these guys from like a usage perspective, where I think he still has somewhat of a handle on early downs, will probably still be at least a 60-40 rusher. Doesn't have the 3 down stuff anymore that he's been losing to Trey Benson, very interestingly. But I think in this matchup, that's okay. So the Cardinals have weirdly been like very pass heavy as a team, both the last 2 weeks and kind of in the second half of last season. But the 49ers bypass rate over expectation allowed have been bottom 3. So one of the heaviest run funnels, both all of last year and this year. So that kind of leads me to believe it's a little bit more of a philosophy personnel thing. Obviously, they swapped out Robert Saleh into their defensive coordinator position this year. So I think like this is a tailor-made game for the Cardinals to just try to smash it with James Conner. We saw that at a lot of points last year that's like what they want to do. So I think it's probably when they go back to old tendencies as opposed to continuing to being very pass heavy. So yeah, I would feel pretty similarly about Conner as I would Breece Hall, just with the spread being closer for Conner and the Cardinals.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Conner over Croskey-Merritt then.
Yeah. Conner over Croskey-Merritt. Sorry, I got to make sure I actually answer the question.
Start, sit. That's what we're doing here, right? Come on. All right, good stuff. We're going to take our first break and then get back with some Ashton Jeanty start, sit decisions for you. Okay, so Ashton Jeanty obviously drafted with high expectations, but people are worried. There's a lot of panic in the street when it comes to these rookie running backs. Let's try to find the Ashton Jeanty line. Starter sit ahead of Ashton Jeanty. We've got some risers here at running back. Maybe some real decisions that people might have to make. And I also just want to talk through some of these running backs that people probably picked up, or maybe they drafted as their RB3 or 4, and now they're considering, like, do I start this guy as my RB2? It's Javonte Williams, Jordan Mason, and Jaylen Warren. You had some Javonte Williams matchup notes.
Yeah, so like aside from this being by far the highest total game of the weekend and that being great, the Bears have been very vulnerable to these man gap runs as well, allowing 6.8 yards per carry on them, as opposed to 3.5 on zone concepts. And Javonte is leading the NFL in success rate on man gap runs. So I think the Cowboys will start to try to get Javonte going. It should be a high scoring game. Like I feel really good about him over Jeanty, but probably not any of these other guys.
Yeah, I really like the spot for Javonte here. The Bears defense, man, has just been struggling out there, giving up a huge explosive rush rate, along with a high rushing success rate to running back runs. 14% missed tackle rate on running back runs is bottom 10 in the league. And Javonte has been surprisingly effective. This line has played well. I think, you've got the shootout, you've got everything you want here. He's running back, I want to say 4 or maybe 6 in expected fantasy points through 2 weeks, and he's just that high in actual production as well. So I do have him at running back 12. I have him ahead of Kenneth Walker, with the assumption that Charbonnet could be limited, could even miss the game. If Charbonnet is out, I'd probably start Kenneth Walker ahead of him just because I think there's more upside. But I have him ahead of Jeanty. I have him ahead of Travis Etienne, Chuba Hubbard. Some tough decisions here, but I'm totally fine rolling with him. The other two were Jordan Mason and Jaylen Warren. So neither of these matchups stand out as good through 2 weeks. Both Cincinnati and the Patriots have been pretty stout against the run, particularly the Patriots. The Patriots are interesting to me. They've missed a lot of tackles on running back runs, but they've also done a very good job of shooting the gaps and limiting yards before contact. But Jaylen Warren, to me, is the kind of guy who can create on his own, is very good at creating yards after contact. I've ended up way higher than consensus on Warren. I've got him at running back 15. The consensus rank is 23. So as you look at the range here for Warren, start with him versus Jeanty, but then is there anybody else here who stands out that you think I clearly should have ahead of him?
Yeah, I'm definitely going Jeanty over Warren. With Warren, like my concern is, as you're saying, the Pats have been good against the run. That's like a Mike Vrabel philosophy thing. Like all of his Titans defenses were always some of the biggest pass funnels in the NFL. That is clearly the case from everything we've seen from the Patriots secondary so far this year. It has been tough to watch. I'm nowhere near that high on Warren. So I would go Jeanty over him. I would be playing Chase Brown over him. You can scroll down even further on the screen here, and I'm probably going to prefer a lot of these guys. Travis Etienne over Warren, I'd be good with this week. Probably like Warren Kamara is about the line I'd be at. So maybe I'm still above consensus, but not quite as much as you.
Yeah, I feel really good about it. He had a 70% snap rate in the first half of their last game. He had 10 of 13 running back touches in week 2 in the first half. The game then turned into a blowout, and so we saw more Kenneth Gainwell. But I think if they can keep it close, which I think is totally realistic against the Patriots, that he could have a 15-plus touch game and be fairly efficient. He can contribute as a receiver as well. We obviously saw that last week. I get what you're saying with the matchup, and that's why I wanted to bring it up on this show. But I'm feeling just pretty bullish about Warren overall. I'm a little bit worried that it's like confirmation bias on my part because I love this guy as a player. I've loved him since he came into the league, you know? Yeah. And so he's finally getting his chance here. But as I look at that role, it's like that. I mean, if the game's close and stays close, and what we saw last week is real, then a 60, 70% snap rate with like most of the touches is pretty freaking good at the running back position. So that to me is like a running back too. I mean, that's the exact same. That's a slightly better version of what Travis Etienne is doing. But that matchup might be much better. Houston, we think of as one of the best defenses, but has really struggled against running backs, has the worst missed tackle rate in the league against running backs so far, which I think is a Bayshall Tootin note, hopefully. But that is probably just confirmation bias on my part as well. Jordan Mason all the way up at running back 11. Just simply start him, right? Is there anybody here, Javonte, Jeanty, is there anybody you would push ahead of him?
Yeah, the more I think about it, like the more I'm like Mason could just get literally 100% of the backfield snaps in this game. So yeah, I would actually play Javonte ahead of him. But yeah, I think I would still play Mason over Jeanty.
Alrighty, good stuff. This is where I landed on the running back rankings. I shuffled them a little bit as we've been talking here. I moved Hampton, Breece, these guys up a little bit, moved Pollard and Kyren Williams down. This is with the assumption that we will have no Jane Daniels. I've settled at running back 25 for Bill, ahead of J.K. Dobbins, David Montgomery, Rhamondre Stevenson, DeAndre Swift. Rhamondre Stevenson is very interesting to me. You said you have him as a clear top 24 running back. Would you put him ahead of Bill?
Yes, I would. Okay. Just because I think, yeah, similar roles, better matchup. Like the Steelers have gotten killed against the run.
Yes, biggest
run funnel by pass rate over expectation allowed through 2 games. Specifically, they've gotten killed by man gap, allowing 7.7 yards per carry to it. Rhamondre Stevenson, 6th most rate of runs on man gap. That's what Josh McDaniels always loves to build the offense around. The playing time should be a little better than usual with the TreVeyon Henderson I was going to say missed pass blocking reps, but just the holds that he got called for 3 times. Yeah, I think it's actually a great Rhamondre game, and I would start him. He'd be my RB25 this week. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I've got him at 29 behind Montgomery, behind Dobbins, Swift, and Bill. But I get it. I think that you could push him up. I agree with everything you said there. Shout out to the Mina Kimes show and Dominique Foxworth. He's a great analyst, and he was talking about the Steelers, and he just says they're not playing with the same physicality. It's just weird. It's weird to see this defense that has been so good do this through 2 weeks. But he said basically they're turning down opportunities to be physical, to go around and try to backdoor blocks, which coaches really teach not to do because you have to be like a ridiculous athlete to pull that off. That's not exactly what we have here with the Pittsburgh linebackers, right? So if they are like not playing as physical as they need to up front, like Rhamondre is the guy, right? I feel like he's definitely the guy to punish you for that. We felt, I mean, here, shout out us. We said kind of the same thing last week about him going into that Miami matchup, is like that this seems like a Rhamondre spot. And indeed it was. It could be another one here. I think, yeah, consensus has him at 29. I have kind of a tough time pushing him ahead of some of these guys that I think have more touchdown upside in Montgomery and Dobbins and Swift. But I get it. I think that's a good call. Alrighty. That's basically all we've got at running back. Oh, real quick. We found the Ashton Jeanty line, but I just want to recap. Javonte Williams over Ashton Jeanty for you, yeah?
Correct.
Along with Mason, but not Warren. And I did move Jeanty just 1 spot ahead of Warren as well. So we're in lockstep there. All right, good stuff. A lot goes into these decisions, usage, team level expectations, offensive line play, as well as like the talent, the skill of the individual players and everything. Ryan, do our best to cover all of that leading up to this later portion of the week where we've arrived. You can find Ryan's work on fantasypoints.com. My work is found right here on this podcast. You are listening to Beyond the Box Score. This is Mastering Matchups. When we get more data, we will get to, really nerd out on a lot of these scheme-related matchup tendencies and stuff. For today, I'm going to just let Ryan cook a little bit. He's prepared a few notes for us, and we'll get into that before we get into some more, quarterback, wide receiver, and flex decisions and stuff like that to end the show. So, Ryan, I want to start with your takes in this order. We're going to go with Kyle Pitts first. Very interesting to me where we have landed now in year 5 with Kyle Pitts. That's very fun. And he's got a matchup here that you think he could exploit. The role has been much better for him so far. They're moving him around a lot more, getting him some shorter targets and stuff like that. He's creating yards after contact in a way that nobody else at the tight end position is through 2 weeks. So he's got a cover 3 matchup. This is a specific type of zone coverage with a single high safety look. Many other coverage types have 2 high safeties. Cover 3 is single high safety predominantly, and it's the most prevalent coverage type in the NFL. Some defenses use it almost half their plays. And you can find all this over at the Fantasy Points data suite if you're curious about it. What are you seeing in this matchup that has you interested in Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, so that you touched on a few things. So yeah, Pitts, first of all, I am shocked that he is at the highest route participation of his career right now. That's just, was not expecting that at all.
He's just become the slot receiver. They've basically like gotten rid of Ray McLeod. And I think it's because he's moving way better laterally than he has in the past. So they can use him in different ways than just the vertical seam stretching stuff.
Yeah, it's sick. No, I mean, just like quick side piece, like Max Tishano, whose content is awesome, that he's like the tight end guru. Remember the tight ends over on Substack. He calls this the wide receiver test, which is like a tight end can basically only run a full snap share if they are more laterally quick and it's just a better receiver than their team slot receiver. Kyle Pitts, this has kind of been his issue his whole career, is he has never really passed that wide receiver test, and he has not been a great inline blocker. So that's kind of been his whole problem. But if they have decided he's better than Ray McLeod at this point, then I don't want to say like wheels up because it's Kyle Pitts, but that's it's kind of exciting. So yeah, just getting into the matchup, cover 3, as you were saying, the Panthers are one of the heaviest cover 3 teams, and Pitts has been really good against specifically that shell over the last year plus 2 games. His targets per route run, we see a boost of 14%, about 60% more fantasy points per route run. He's just always been more efficient against that shell. We can be very confident the Panthers, as you said, will play it on nearly half their plays. They do this basically every single week. They just do not change up their coverages that often. What's also nice is the Panthers dead last in the NFL in pressure rate through 2 weeks. That was very similar to last year. That just kind of helps, especially with these tight ends, quarterbacks like having more time to get through progressions. If the tight end's not always going to be the first read, that always just boosts them up as well. I think that's mostly what I had on Pitts, and just the Panthers have also just been very generous to tight ends from an on-paper perspective, both last year and this year. They allowed like over 3 yards per route run to Brenton Strange in week 1. Like it's just a perfect tight end matchup spot. So Pitts is an easy tight end 1. I think you're appropriately high. Tight end 9 feels very good to me that you have him up here on the screen for.
I try to stay appropriately high, especially as it pertains to Kyle Pitts. Here we have Kyle Pitts consensus ranking at 11 overall at tight end, just ahead of Harold Fannin, behind Zach Ertz, behind Jake Ferguson, behind TJ Hawkinson, which is pretty wild to me. The guys I have ahead of him are Sam Laporta, facing the Ravens on the road, and Juwan Johnson, who I think this might be a decision for people, right? That Kyle Pitts and Johnson have kind of been waiver wire players early in the year. Johnson has a really tough Seattle defense here. Is there anybody you would push him ahead of, or is this just like basically exactly where you're at as tight end 9? Because we do have the Atlanta receivers back in the fold now, although Mooney might not play.
Yeah, I think this is exactly where he should be. Juwan, I'm also pretty high on. Seahawks are very much like an underneath funnel. I think that kind of benefits him specifically this week. Laporta, it's just hard to. Yeah, the role is good for Laporta. Like it should be the perfect game scripts. Like, I think Pitts at 9 is as aggressive as I want to be. But I do, for anyone that plays DFS, I do kind of like him as like a sneaky kind of one-off option here in a game where like Bijan Robinson is going to get a ton of ownership. So that's another little note.
Okay. Yeah. For everything that we like about Pitts, the pre-snap motion and everything, like that's happening for Juwan Johnson too. Like they're using him really creatively. Kellen Moore here in New Orleans, it's basically been him and Chris Olave that have really benefited from the way that Moore likes to feature pass catchers and get them involved as pre-snap motion players. And on top of that, he's literally leading his team in first read targets as a tight end, which you almost never see. Like Pitts has had good usage and he's had receivers missing. and still his first read target rate's like 20% or something like that. Juwan Johnson's is up at near 30%, which probably isn't going to sustain. But the fact that he can even get there, I think it makes a lot of sense that he's truly like near a top 5 fantasy tight end. I actually really like a lot of these spots for tight ends this week. I think Travis Kelce is a strong start. And then Jake Ferguson is who I want to get to next. I think he's a really strong start. So I've got him 3 spots ahead of consensus. I have him at tight end 6 with only Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Travis Kelce, and then Bowers McBride ahead of Jake Ferguson. You had some matchup notes on him in this potential shootout against Dallas or against Chicago?
I do, yeah. So this is a Dennis Allen defense who was head coach of the Saints last year. And what we saw from him very consistently was he is going to play near league high rates of cover 2 and generally a lot of 2 high safety looks as well. That's kind of what we've seen from the Bears through 2 weeks. And Jake Ferguson actually owns the highest targets per route run against 2 high of any Cowboys receiver at 27%. So higher than CeeDee Lamb, higher than George Pickens. And that's, again, since the start of last season. Against cover 2, it's even more insane. He is 3rd of 137 qualifying wide receivers and tight ends in yards per route run against cover 2. This is just generally kind of a scheme that benefits the tight ends and the secondary options in an offense. Ferguson's usage has been awesome. He's, I believe, 2nd in expected fantasy points per game among tight ends so far. It's higher first read target share than George Pickens. Ferguson to me is actually a top 3 tight end this week. I would play over. Yeah, I would play him over Kelce. I'd play him over Warren. I'd play him over Kraft.
Welcome to Beyond the Box Score, Mastering Matchups. We get pretty crazy here. We've got Jake Ferguson up at tight end 3. His expert consensus ranking is tight end 9. I love that. This was a Scott Barrett and Fantasy Points data call like way back this offseason. I remember y'all talking about just that we could see a lot more targets than expected funneled Ferguson's way because the George Pickens edition doesn't really take anything away from him. It actually helps to lift the lid on the defense a little bit. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb both being excellent man coverage beaters. But what's played the most often in the NFL is zone coverage, these 2 high shells, and that's more of a spot for Jake Ferguson to pile up targets. Dak Prescott not afraid to just keep feeding him the ball, and that's what we've seen through 2 weeks with the expected fantasy points through the roof for Jake Ferguson. Wild stuff. All right, we're going to take another break and get back and give you a few more start-sit decisions here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake.
Or people appreciating your fashion sense.
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Ryan, we are back and we have some wide receivers to discuss. Ladd McConkey facing the Denver Broncos. It's been a bit of a slow start. Obviously, the Broncos have tremendous secondary pass rush that can scare you. Where the Chargers at in implied points, it's pretty high. You think this could be a shootout? I have ended up a little bit lower on McConkey than consensus. The Chargers are 10th, tied with the Eagles and the Colts in implied points for week 3. So they have McConkey. Consensus has McConkey at wide receiver 16. I'm a wide receiver 20. I have Deebo Samuel ahead of him. He'll probably bump down if we get confirmation that Jaylen is out. But I also have Jacoby Myers and George Pickens ahead of him, which is a significant deviation from consensus. So sell me on McConkey because I want to be there.
Yeah, so I would push him up to wide receiver 15, so just ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. this week. With McConkey, it's kind of the perfect schematic matchup for him. The Broncos love to play a ton of man coverage, and McConkey, that's kind of always been his looks that he beats the most. 17% higher targets
you can't
per
do
run
that against
man. Yeah. 17% higher target per route run against man. His yards per route run against man is top 10 since the start of 2024, which is kind of wild for a guy who was a rookie in 2024. And we see the opposite with Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. Keenan, his yards per route run decreases by 38% against man. Quentin Johnston, a 40% decline to his fantasy points per route run. Johnston also likely dealing with Pat Surtain on the outside. And in addition, Ladd has always been Herbert's kind of blitz beater / pressure beater security blanket, right? So pressure generally is bad for most wide receivers, but it's like the least bad for Ladd because McConkey just gets all of the targets whenever Herbert's under pressure. 26% target per route run on pressure dropbacks since the start of last season. That compares to 9% for Quentin Johnson. It's kind of wild. Like Herbert just locks onto him every time he knows the blitz is coming. It's just the perfect get right spot for Ladd. If the Chargers continue throwing at the rate they have been, I just expect this to be like like Ladd McConkey's really freaking good, and he didn't score a touchdown through 2 games, and we all kind of forgot about him and we're worried, but I'm not worried about Ladd.
I love it. Talk to people through the QJ note. You think that Surtain will be on him mostly. I think a lot of people might presume that Surtain will just follow Ladd McConkey. Do you have any thoughts on that, how Denver's defense works that way?
Yeah, so generally Surtain is not going to follow receivers into the slot mostly from what we see. And Ladd and Keenan have been about 50-50 in the slot. And QJ is also kind of much more plays like the X receiver role in the offense, which is kind of what opposing cornerbacks will typically shadow. So that's the thought there. Will McConkey see like some Surtain? Maybe, but I just always remember like that one Jerry Jeudy like 300-yard game or whatever it was against the Broncos last year, where everyone was like, well, why isn't Surtain shadowing him? And it's like, yeah, he's roasting every other DB because they're moving him around. They're putting him in the slot. Like they're doing what an intelligent offense would do against a defense that has one clear best coverage corner. So I expect pretty similar from the Chargers this week.
Yeah, I think the blitz note is really important, that this Denver defense does blitz so much. Number 1 in the league so far. The only defense that's blitzed on over half of their defensive plays through 2 weeks. You don't want to leave yourself shorthanded against Ladd McConkey. Any fewer defenders that you have back to try to keep up with him, I think is only setting yourself up for failure. Justin Herbert has been very good against the blitz, QB2 in catchable ball rate, QB3 in highly accurate throw rate. Since the start of last season when facing the blitz per fantasy points data. So I do think that this makes a lot of sense and he needs to push up my rankings. I like him ahead of BTJ. I think I would push him ahead of Tedero McMillan, who I have at wide receiver 14 currently. And honestly, it's like him or Justin Jefferson, him or Garrett Wilson, him or Devontae Adams. Where would you put him among that trio?
I would keep him below McMillan just because it sounds like AJ Terrell is going to be out. So I'm extremely bullish on Tet as well, but I would get flipping them there. I definitely would not push him over Adams though.
Yeah, so that's a good matchup note for McMillan. We're talking about the rookie for Carolina against the Falcons. I just do think it's like so relevant that, we've got the Chargers at 24 implied points and the Panthers are down at 19. This could be a shootout if Bryce plays well, if the offensive line allows for him to facilitate the necessary volume for these receivers. And I'm extremely bullish on T-Mac. Definitely go listen to the Wednesday Beyond the Box Score episode that I did with Dan. We got into some really interesting stuff relating to the types of routes that these guys are running, how that's working, and like how this might change going forward. It's been actually a surprisingly low target share and first read target share for Tedero McMillan so far. And I think a lot of that has to do with the types of routes they've asked him to run as they try to play catch up. It's been a lot of like send everybody deep, and if it's not there, then we're dumping down. And that's not really the functional way that we've seen this Dave Canales offense work. We're seeing way more running backs go to way more targets go to running backs than in the past. I think we could see this role really scale up for McMillan, and with the cornerback 1 out for Atlanta, like this is the perfect spot for it to happen. But yeah, I'm really excited about Ladd with everything you've laid out. So I think that's probably good for people to hear because it's been a slow start. Okay, let's go completely opposite end of the spectrum here from Ladd McConkey. We're getting into some deep potential plays here. Quentin Johnston in this range. We just talked about him. Talk to me about DonTayvion Wicks. Is anyone ready to be hurt again?
I am so ready to be hurt again. Like as soon as it like registered to me that DonTayvion Wicks was a guy I could tout this week, I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna do it so hard, and it may blow up in my face, but I'm going to have so much fun doing it anytime I get the chance to tout DonTayvion Wicks. So I guess starting with it's different this time for Wicks because he is in more of the slot role, at least from what we saw after Jayden Reed went out of week 2. And that's notable specifically against the Browns because their slot corners are kind of like the weak spot of this team. They've been kind of splitting off between two guys. One is like a 2023 day 3 pick. The other's a 2024 day 3 pick. They collectively allowed like 3 touchdowns, I believe, last week, though annoyingly none to Zay Flowers, who we thought was going to be in the slot the most. So yeah, that's like kind of the soft spot of this Brown secondary. Also, they play a ton of man coverage, a ton of cover 1. Both of those, DonTayvion Wicks averages like completely insane per route stats against. He's at a 40% target per route run rate against man coverage since the start of last year. That is behind only Puka Nacua, ahead of AJ Brown and Malik Neighbors. Not even that small of a sample, by the way. That's only 16 fewer routes against man than Puka Nacua. Like, Wicks is just an insane separator. He's great in the average separation score against man coverage as well. Can he catch? Can he not drop every single pass thrown to him? I do not know. But like, as a spot start that is sitting out there on a bunch of waiver wires that you can just throw into your flex this week in managed leagues, as a guy that's only 3,700 on DraftKings and DFS, like I'm extremely interested. He's up at around, I think it's 12 fantasy points per game in career starts with above a 60% route share. So I feel very good about Wicks. It's the perfect matchup spot. I would move him over a lot of these guys you have here, actually.
Count me as also extremely interested. I was 9 spots ahead of consensus coming into this, but I am going to move him up the board for sure. So I've got a fun question for you. Travis Hunter or DonTayvion Wicks?
Oh God.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sad. Give me Hunter. I think that actually is the Wicks line right there.
Waddle or Wicks? I don't really like the matchup here for Waddle.
Yeah, I don't either.
Short target funnel here.
Yeah, give me Wicks over Waddle.
That's where I just put him. Okay. Wicks or Calvin Ridley?
Give me Ridley. I think Titans could be a little more functional this week. Only the Colts have generated less pressure than the Panthers through 2 weeks. So we get to see Cam Ward like not running for his life on every single drop back potentially. So I'm pretty interested in the Titans this week, actually.
Nice. All right, we found it. We found the DonTayvion Wicks spot. I'm going to adjust my rankings and then show you guys where I landed. So before that, I just want you to point out anything that stands out from this range. Let's start with AJ Brown. I've got him at wide receiver 16. And people are having a tough time with this. We're going to get into some flex discussions around AJ Brown. But first, does this feel like an appropriate range for AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, some of these guys that we're having a tough time with adjusting to the first couple of weeks?
Yeah, Jefferson, I'm not really that concerned about it. I think, you should have him ranked top 12, which you do. Brown, like... This is like not really matchup based at all, but like this Eagles offense just is very, very worrying to me. Like we've seen the rate of during snap motion fall a ton from what we saw with Kellen Moore. It kind of seems like they're just playing on every set of downs to like get within 2 or 3 yards on third down so they can run the tush push twice in a row, which just means we're just not trying to create explosive plays when we have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley on our team, which is kind of wild to me. But yeah, I mean, with all that said, I think you have Brown exactly where he should be. Just, there's upside in any given week for sure. So it's hard to get him below wide receiver 17, but it's not, I don't feel good. And he's someone I'm like actively selling in seasonal leagues or in dynasty, just trying to get what value I can.
Okay. Give me some more pushback on somebody here then, Ryan. I've got George Pickens at 18. Against the Bears defense, maybe is a little bit shorthanded and banged up in the secondary, has struggled overall. That's 7 spots ahead of consensus. Does that look right to you? Where's somebody that doesn't look right to you in these rankings?
I would push Deebo up above a Myers, above a Pickens even. I think this sets up as kind of a perfect spot for him where you have Austin Eckler coming out, which creates very likely more targets out of the backfield for Deebo Samuel. Pete Carroll defenses have always been very vulnerable to short targets and targets out of the backfield. Deebo and Eckler had combined for over 50% of the Commanders' targets within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage through the first 2 weeks. I think he just kind of takes over that entire role. He's a total PPR cheat code for the rest of the season. And yeah, he should be ranked as like a mid-range wide receiver too.
Okay. Did you say over Pickens for him?
Yeah, I would put Deebo over Pickens.
Okay. What about BTJ? I have him at wide receiver 16, which is 5 spots below consensus. Don't love the matchup here. But even this like feels maybe too high. I have him ahead of AJ Brown, ahead of Deebo. Would you move him any lower?
For this week specifically, yes, with the Derek Stingley coverage is concerning to me. So yeah, I think he's good to go below AJ Brown, below Deebo this week. Long term, I'm fine on BTJ. I'm buying in seasonal and all that. I think this offense is going to be very good, and BTJ is very good. But yeah, I think that makes sense for this week.
Alrighty. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill. He's another one that I think people are having a tough time with. I have him in the same range as T. Higgins, Jameson Williams, Terry McLaurin. Who the hell knows what to do with any of those players? Above them, you find a couple other guys like that. Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton. Like, I don't really know. I think Sutton is fine. I feel pretty good about, his role, even though it wasn't great last week. It could be a shootout here against the Chargers, but this Chargers defense has been freaking nails, dude. Like, and they don't want to give up deep passing. So like, I don't know what to do with this range at all. I could easily be talked into reordering it. Does anybody stand out like as needing to move up or down from the guys that I just mentioned?
Yeah, so I think you're correct to have Metcalf at the top of this from a matchup perspective. We've seen the Patriots give up among the most deep receiving yards in the league through 2 weeks. I think it's finally like a good spot for Metcalf. Sutton, I'm probably more concerned about this week than you are. I would probably move him closer to the bottom of this range, or maybe down below Jameson Williams, but still above Tyreek Hill. Yeah, the Chargers, as you were kind of alluding to, play a ton of too high looks. They always have. And what we saw from Sutton last week is his route share was the lowest it's ever been with Sean Payton. Troy Franklin's, on the other hand, was the highest that any non-Sutton receiver's route share has ever been with Sean Payton. Franklin, over his career, has been better against too high looks than Sutton. And we saw him kind of in this underneath design target role. He got 4 design targets last week out of 6 on the team. All of them came against too high looks. So I think we kind of see more of the same against the Chargers this week. That's at least how I would prognosticate like the Broncos game plan. So yeah, I would move Sutton down. Troy Franklin, we haven't talked about. I haven't seen him in your ranks, but I'd probably move him up from wherever you have him. And yeah, we can talk about him here. Yeah. So why are you below consensus on Troy Franklin this week?
Mainly the matchup and lack of confidence in Bo Nix. I think it's a really fragile equation we were dealing with Troy Franklin, which is pretty similar to the other guys I have him ranked around. I also don't really buy anything that Sean Payton does on a individual week basis. So I'm fine moving him ahead of the Browns receivers. Don't feel great about them. If you want to move him ahead of Stephon Diggs, Quentin Johnston, Shakir, I guess I'm fine with that. But yeah, I would not want to start Troy Franklin this week.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. I don't think I'm like, I would rather start DonTayvion Wicks than Troy Franklin for sure. If those are like the two like waiver wire pickup flex guys that you might be debating, it definitely Wicks to me. But I do feel good about Franklin. I think like, yes, it could just go back to being what it was that every previous week with Sean Payton kind of doing whatever the hell he wants. But I'd rather find that out with Franklin sitting on my bench than with Franklin sitting on someone else's bench is how I would put it. Just with what we knew about him as a prospect, how efficient he was in college, like I am pretty optimistic on him. And yeah, as I said, I like this matchup too.
Yeah. Totally fair. Okay, so thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate you being here to help me work through my rankings with your prognostication. I don't know if you heard this, but I was one of the most accurate rankers in all the land last week, and I'm going to credit that entirely to you for being here to help me do this on the show. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for doing my work for me. We're going to talk through a few flex decisions and get out of here. So what I've got here is per the Fantasy Pros rankings widget here. You can look at they just like put these in here. I didn't have time to do the flex rankings myself, so don't feel attached to where any of these players fall. Like Brian Thomas Jr., based off of where I have my receivers, my running backs, my tight ends ranked, this is where they would put him in flex for half PPR. I want to talk about some of the guys in this range because this might be a similar decision for managers out there. So we've already talked about the matchup for BTJ, AJ Brown, Omarion Hampton. Those are going to be our first three guys here. So just rapid fire, Ryan. I'll give you a name. You tell me if you would start them or BTJ. We've got Tony Pollard.
BTJ.
Deebo. Easy. Deebo. We've already talked about that. Kyren Williams.
Deebo. BTJ.
Okay. So clearly ahead of these running backs. How about Breece Hall?
BTJ. I don't feel great about it.
Interesting. Okay. So how about Omarion Hampton, who we're about to get to?
Oh wow, you have Hampton pretty high for running backs, but yeah, BTJ.
Okay. AJ Brown, we've gotten this same range. We'll talk about him next. So I'm just going to keep pushing up the running back rankings and see where we land on AJ Brown and BTJ. This is for half PPR. James Conner or Chuba Hubbard. You have these receivers above them?
No, I think that's the line.
We found the line. Okay. So AJ Brown and BTJ, profiling pretty similarly for you. I think that's fair. That's about where I'm at with these players. I'm intrigued by some of the players in this Rams-Eagles game if it stays close and is like it has some shootout potential. I think we could see things become more like focused on Kyren Williams and AJ Brown and like the premium players for each team than we have seen through these first couple of weeks. So I'm fine starting them, even though it's been bad. I think this is about where I would land as well on these guys. So let's figure out Omarion Hampton, how many of these receivers we would push ahead of him. Deebo Samuel, yes. George Pickens ahead of Omarion Hampton?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking half PPR. So Jacoby Myers ahead of Hampton?
Yeah, I think he's the last one, though.
Okay, no Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, those guys you want behind Hampton, behind Breece Hall, and then like maybe above these guys, Pollard, Kyren Williams, Jacory, Croskey-Merritt?
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think that looks about right. Okay, cool. So we sorted through some of the probably like premium flex decisions, but in 10-team leagues or if your team's stacked or whatever, you might be looking at some of these decisions. Next is Tyreek Hill and T. Higgins. I want to try to make sense of these guys. So here they are. Like these are low end wide receiver 2s, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin in this range as well. How do they stack up compared to some of these running backs, or even like, would you potentially push some of these premium tight ends? Like you're really excited about Ferguson, Tucker Kraft, Tyler Warren. Would they sniff this wide receiver range for you?
Like Ferguson, Tucker Kraft, I'd play those guys over Hunter, over I guess over Ridley and Wandale, not over Keenan.
Yeah. Okay. That's mostly just like for DFS, if you have these guys, you're starting them at tight end, but it's just something I think is interesting to think about because these tight ends are starting to look really good, some of them. Okay. So for this receiver range, let's talk about the running backs. Bill Croskey-Merritt ahead of or behind Tyreek Hill, Cortland Sutton, Jameson Williams, T. Higgins?
I think ahead of all those guys if we're half PPR. Yeah.
Dobbins or DeAndre Swift, where do they fall? I have such a hard time with Swift. I really feel like this could be the rug pull week for him.
Yeah, me too, man.
But it's the shootout. Everything sets up well. Like the matchup is fine. Like it could be a huge game. That's kind of like these receivers. It could be a huge game for these. Could be huge games for these receivers, but at the same time, any of them could give you like 4.
Yeah. I think I like it where you have it. I think this range of receivers probably belongs behind Swift and Dobbins and those guys.
How about Rhamondre Stevenson, who you really like? He would be pushing then all the way up into, so you have him ahead of Jacory, Croskey-Merritt. Would you push him ahead of Mike Evans and DK Metcalf?
No. Yeah, he's like with Pollard, Kyron for me. Probably, yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to do this though. Like these are just these are mine. Like you submit your rankings how you want.
Of course.
I want you to be the most accurate and not blame me for being the least accurate.
No, it's all on you. All right. Let's talk about Travis Hunter. Then what the hell are we doing with Travis Hunter? We have him ahead of DonTayvion Wicks and behind Calvin Ridley. What about some of these running backs? TreVeyon Henderson or Travis Hunter?
I'll go Hunter there.
Nick Chubb, Isaiah Pacheco.
Chubb, I don't know. Like he looked a little better last week.
Yeah, he looked fine in week 1 too.
Yeah.
He's like discount Javonte.
Yeah. I still can't play Nick Chubb over Travis Hunter though. That just feels so disgusting. That's
nice.
Not happening.
Cam Scatterboo? How are we feeling about?
Yeah, against the Chiefs though, it's like
what's Scott's
very,
nickname
very
for
hard.
him? Oh, Marshall Chalk. How are we feeling about Marshall Chalk here?
I mean, probably higher than you have him. I would start Scatterboo over TreVeyon Henderson this week. So I would push him over some of these like wide kind of marginal wide receivers too, just on a expected volume basis.
Over Wicks, over Hunter?
No, give me Wicks over Scatterboo. So yeah,
Okay.
just Scatterboo above Pacheco, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, could be. I'm not sure. I could see if Dan, my usual co-host, my lovely co-host Dan Schneier, has his own podcast, Big Blue Banter. He's a huge Giants fan and analyst, and like pays close attention to the team. He feels like it's possible that week 2 was kind of almost like a punishment for Tyron Tracy for some of the off-field like comments about, you know, like what the team needs to be doing offensively. And then we saw a lot more Scatterboo. So like, I think it's possible things could shift back a little bit more evenly than we saw last week. I also think that the Chiefs defense, like you can run on them, but I don't know if it's going to be the way that Scatterboo likes to run. I think they're a pretty sound tackling team. Nick Bolton and those guys, like I think they have physicality. They maybe just don't have quite as much speed as you would like. So that's why I was a little bit lower on him. But the bowl case is exciting. Like I think there's an outcome where the Giants beat the Chiefs in this game, and it comes through like Scatterboo, like them running the ball a lot, and it working, and just like this being an ugly game where they grind it out, and this is like the Scatterboo breakout on Sunday night. That wouldn't surprise me either. So yeah, I think it's totally fair to start him over Henderson, but not over DonTayvion Wicks. No way, not on our watch.
Yep.
What?
Yeah, you've given me something to root for on Sunday night now. Thank you. I just am in love with this idea of the Giants beating the Chiefs through Camp Scatterboo.
That would be fun. All right, this has been fun. Thank you so much, Ryan. Let the people know where they can find you, what you are working on, and then let's get out of here.
Yeah, you can find all my written work over on fantasypoints.com. That's the everything report, co-written with Scott Barrett early in the week, taking you through all the usage, everything you need to know for managed leagues that we're seeing in the data. And then advanced matchups comes out every Friday morning. That is much more of a DFS and betting focused article, but I get very into the weeds on some of the matchups that we talk about here and relevant angles for betting and DFS. And yeah, again, that's Friday mornings on fantasypoints.com that you can find it. I'm on X at RyanJ_Heath, and that's about it.
Good stuff. Go follow Ryan. Definitely check out his work. If you like this, you're going to like that matchups article. It's very, very cool. He puts a lot of thought and time into that, and we appreciate that. This is Beyond the Box Score. This is the kind of conclusion of like everything we're building throughout the week to try to help prepare you to make the best decisions here. We've got, leading up to this, it's like we're going through all the usage notes. That's on Wednesday's podcast. We look at every single team, every single player, and like help you understand how things are being broken down, what kind of volume might be facilitated through these passing games, and how offenses want to attack, and how things might develop going forward. We also did a bunch of like rest of season rankings and trade targets and stuff like that to try to just make sense of like how the fantasy landscape is shifting in these early weeks, because I think it can be, while everyone is often overreactive, it can also be a bit slow to react to the confirmation that we are getting on some of these roles and the ways that the teams want to use these players. So definitely go check that out if you have not. Thank you for being here. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment, a review on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you get your streaming done. Thank you all so much. Have a good weekend.